Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's podcast. And I'm joined by Claire, who I knew Claire when, we were quite young, 16, 17, 18. And we used to go to the pub together, obviously, and to do other things, of course. Going to the pub at 16 for the younger listeners, it's not always a good thing, but we survived, and here we are. Now, Claire has got another episode on this podcast called Conversations from the Coffee Shop. We were talking about grief, and sadly, Claire, you've had quite a lot of grief in your life. And so we're going to hear your story, and I know you're going to talk about your mum and your daughter, Annaliese. So thank you so much for being here and sharing your story and sharing ways that we can help each other through grief. So welcome, Claire.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you. So just tell us a little bit about your story. We talked about your mum first.
Yes.
Your mum. So let's.
Yes. So you knew my mum. In fact, we went on a holiday.
So it was south of France.
Yeah. My sister is still going there to that campsite with her family. Yes. So yeah, my mum died quite suddenly when she was only 62. And as I'm sort of not quite there, but approaching that sort of age, it's even more kind of shocking. She was an extremely vivacious, vibrant, fun woman, and we were very close. As she wasn't feeling well and went to the doctor. Anyway, they diagnosed gallbladder cancer, which is very rare, but it had spread. So I remember she got her diagnosis on St. Patrick's Day. That was a date that was very relevant to me because I worked in the drinks industry and Guinness was one of our brands. So I always remember that date. So that was the 17th of March and she died on the 10th of June. So she had some chemo, it didn't do anything. And she really went downhill very quickly. And it was a very shocking experience to go through, to see somebody who my mum was 14 years younger than my dad. And so, he's now also died, but he was 82 when he died. And that, that's sort of a bit more acceptable somehow. But it just wasn't the way that things were supposed to go. And it was a big shock. And I was, at the time, my younger sister, had two very small children. My sister's got twins. And at the time they were 2. So she had her hands really full. I didn't have kids at that point, and I was very much involved with my mum and her treatment and, traveling to be with her and stuff like that, and just supporting my parents where I could, basically. But it was a very shocking experience to go through, and I'm sure lots of your listeners will have had similar experiences, and it's just one of those slightly surreal, out of body times. But it was over quite quickly. It was only 10 weeks. And then life as we knew it, family life as we knew it, altered. And I think, people often say that the kind of, matriarchal figure is the one that holds a family together, that makes things happen. And I that certainly was true for our family. I don't think we realized it at the time, but the sands underneath our family life really shifted, and that became obvious as the kind of years went on. So that was, I suppose. And how old was I then? I was, my early 40s. So, I suppose lucky that I hadn't had a close bereavement. I mean, her parents were still alive, so I hadn't even lost my grandparents at that stage. And rather tragically, as I look back on it now, my mum's sister died about 6 weeks before her, and they were only a year apart. So my poor grandparents lost both of their daughters in the space of a couple of months, which, is sort of mind-blowing. But yeah, that was my first really big loss, and that was 2010. And so we are now 16 years on from that. And in that time, my husband and I have lost the other 3 parents, all in quite close succession. And as you mentioned, most kind of catastrophically, our daughter, when she was 7, Annaliese, and in 2018. So yeah, it's been a lot, when you draw a sort of timeline of the things that happen, and obviously, well, not obviously, but with all of the parents dying, there was illness involved, and it was, a bit more drawn out than mum, and you go through that period of trying to support them and get things, So there was quite a lot. Annalise was very different. It was very quick, almost overnight, not quite, but almost. And so, yeah, I am experienced in the world of grief. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and which is a very sad thing to say, because just before we came onto the podcast, I was saying, sadly, unfortunately, you are an expert in this area, and you and your husband have been through a lot. And just before we go on to talk more about the loss of Annalise and the impact of that, when we have older parents and we start to lose them, and I can only talk from the experience of losing my dad, and now my father-in-law's in a care home, but there is a lot of pressure that comes with that, and it changes family life and dynamics.
Mm.
How did you and Matt get through that together?
I think that I think because we'd lost my mum first, and she was, weirdly, all of the other three parents were 82. They were all 82 when they died. And mum was 62. And I think because mum died first, I think it made losing our parents at 82 easier to cope with,
Mm.
because at that point, mum dying felt really unfair, really just caught us all unawares kind of thing. Whereas with the others, they were getting older, there were more signs that, and and honestly, the answer to that is I don't really know how we got through it. We've just celebrated 20 years together last month, and we've been through I mean, I know 20 years is a long time, but we have been through a lot. I mean, we'd only been together for 4 years when mum died.
Mm.
Um, and I think we've just taken it a step at a time. I think it helped that we just sort of accept that each other grieves in a different way, and we haven't put pressure on each other. Our family circumstances have been quite dramatically changed in both families, and not for the better, really. And I think I think honestly, Nikki, that you just put one foot in front of the other, because what else can you do? But I am grateful that we have survived it, especially the loss of Annalise. The death of a child breaks many relationships. The odds are stacked against you. And I remember being aware of that, reading that very early on into our journey as bereaved parents, and feeling absolutely terrified, that we would be one of those statistics, because we are quite different people. We've grieved very differently. We wanted very different. Our immediate reaction to things were quite different. We also had a 5-year-old at the time, and you know there were some really hellish, difficult days. But I don't think there is a magic formula. I think I think understanding and accepting that people handle things differently is probably the thing that's been the most helpful. And he hasn't had expectations of me, and I have tried really hard not to have expectations of him. And for example, he doesn't really like me. In the early days when I was very emotional, I cried every day for probably the best part of a year, which is a lot. He found that really hard because not he's not outwardly as emotional as I am. I've always been quite emotional, as you know. And I find that easy and I find it helpful for me. But he doesn't know what to do with me when I'm like that. And I found that a bit tricky at first because I was like, he was the person. We were together when Annaliese died. We went through that experience together, and I'm grateful for that because if it had just been one of us, it would have been really tough. But I did feel a bit let down that he couldn't sort of hold me. I don't mean physically, I mean emotionally in that way. But that just wasn't his way of dealing with it. And I, over the years, found other people that could, you know, he would just say things like, she wouldn't want you to be upset. And I found that really deeply unhelpful because I was like, well, but I am upset. And, but I think appreciating that people grieve very differently is something that's really important and
Mm.
not putting pressure on yourself or another person to do it in the way that you feel is best or right, because there is no best or right. There is just your way.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think you highlight a really important point there that we're all very different and grief hits us all in different ways, emotionally and physically. And
Yeah.
as you say, there is no right or wrong, there is no rule book.
No.
It's how you manage each other and that acceptance. So the word
Yeah.
acceptance, I think, is quite key there, isn't it? Because otherwise it can drive a wedge
Yeah.
between people, even like and families and partners
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
especially around that sudden shocking loss that you both
Yes.
experienced around.
Yes. And I think, I actually found, and family members found it difficult. They've lost somebody too. I think I definitely made more allowances for Matt than I probably did for other members of my family, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
And I feel like 8 years on, I can see that there were times when I was probably unreasonable or expected them to give me something that they weren't able to. And I was angry. And I've never really been an angry person, but I was really angry for a few years. And I found my way back now. Interestingly, I was reminded of this just a couple of weeks ago. My sister had to have her dog put down. Now, her dog is the same age as our dog, it's only 7, so very young, and it was very sad. And I was really upset for them as a family, and I knew, and I was genuinely high levels of empathy, wanted to be there to support my sister, and blah blah blah. Now, if that had happened 2 years after Annaliese had died, I would not have had that level of grace and empathy and just balance. I wasn't a balanced person. And I am able to find that balance again now. And I didn't think I ever would, but I know time as a healer is a lot of people disagree with that. And I don't necessarily agree with it as it is, but I think what time does, it doesn't heal you,
Mm.
but it allows you to learn to live mostly. If you're lucky, some people don't, and some people never, I would say, learn to live with it. But I have learned to live alongside my grief every day. And I was saying to somebody very recently who's just become a bereaved parent, I genuinely never thought I would be happy. I never thought I would laugh. I never thought I would want to go to a party again. I never thought I would feel joy. I thought that would be impossible. And it took some time, years, a few years, and gradually the kind of chinks of light would come through. And I am now in a place where I live with sadness every day.
Mm.
And it's a very pertinent time to be talking to you because I'm only 3 days away from the anniversary of Annaliese's death. And that is always my trickiest time of year because I am revisiting in the back of my mind like this little loop. What could I have done differently? What decisions should I have made? And you sort of, I still carry that guilt and that feeling. I know rationally that I did everything I could, but emotionally, I still carry that. And so this time of year is particularly difficult. But even at this time of year, I am able to have fun conversations, to laugh, to appreciate the fact that it's going to be a beautiful sunny weekend. And, I've been able to make space for that, but it did take me a while. And so I think one of the things when you're grieving a loss, whatever the loss is, but particularly when you're a bereaved parent, because I do believe, having experienced other losses, I, you know, that is a loss that is on a different level.
Mm.
However old your child is, I'm sure my grandparents never felt the same again. And their daughters were in their 60s when they died. Annalise was 7 and she was a little blonde, beautiful little imp, very cheeky, very, at times, very tricky to parent. But a loss like that is cataclysmic. It just is. But even something like that, I think just be patient with yourself and allow yourself time and don't expect too much too soon. And at some point, you will be surprised that, oh, I didn't cry today, or oh, I slept through the night. Oh, I laughed at that program on telly. Because all of those things in of themselves sound, you know, pretty small. But when you're in that kind of place, they're absolutely ginormous. Those sorts of baby steps that you take to finding yourself again.
Mm. Yeah, and you use the phrase walking alongside grief or living alongside grief, which I thought was a very poignant phrase that it never goes and it's always there.
No,
You just
no.
learn to live with it.
Yeah. And I'm lucky that I'm somebody that is a natural communicator. I like talking to people. I find expressing myself relatively easy. I mean, in the early days, in the early couple of years, I lost quite a lot of that. Your brain changes. Your ability to do stuff changes, and you find yourself thinking, "Oh my God, why can't I have a conversation with somebody? Why can't I remember what?" Because you've had like a brain injury, is how I used to think about it. But I have found that I've got that back, and I'm lucky that I've always been able to talk about Annalise, happy to talk about her. I know that you feel the same in terms of, like when your dad died, what you experienced is very common, that people are terrified of talking to you about him and asking you about him. But all you want to do is talk about this amazing person that you've had in your life. And why would you want to stop doing that? Now, not again, I will caveat it with not everybody is like that. Some people don't want to discuss it, but I would say the majority do, and the majority of people want to say their name. There's a really strong feeling of, I want people to know about Annalise, and I love it when, obviously she was 7, so she was in year 2 at school. There is a whole class of her peers who are now turning 15 and who I see, around and about quite frequently. I find it, I find that quite hard.
Mm.
I find it difficult to connect her to them now because are, you know, they are teenagers becoming grown-ups and not like the kids that when I knew them. But I love it when parents of those kids, her middle name was Poppy, and I love it, they send me that, we might be out on a run and they see some poppies and they'll send me a photo of it and they'll say, oh, I was thinking about Annaliese today, or they'll replay a couple of, stories or whatever. They tell me that their kids shared a story with them, and that is lovely because it's really important to me that she's not forgotten and that she has an impact and that people remember her, because I've got a card, it's still up now, that somebody sent me, and it's very simple and it just says, no, I'm going to get it wrong. Something like, you know, she was here, she mattered, you know, she lived, kind of thing, or something like that, which is, she is just as much a part of our family life today, 8 years on from when she died, as she was when she was here. And that, even when I say that, I really appreciate how weird that might sound to some people.
Mm.
But just because they're not here with us physically, I can't touch her, I can't hold her, but she's everywhere, she's everywhere. And I think about her every day, and 9 times out of 10, I can do that now in a way that makes me feel warm or makes me smile. But there is still 10% of the time, and it can catch me randomly. I'm conscious that I sound quite together, quite, there are times when something will happen and I sobbing, absolutely sobbing. But I allow that to come.
Mm.
And I accept that that's part of who I am. I'm not embarrassed about it. Sometimes it happens in front of other people. Sometimes it happens in front of people I don't know very well. And I'm okay with that.
Mm.
That's just part of who I am. And if I didn't feel, that there's that expression, isn't there, that, oh, what is it? Like, it's the price of love, that
Yeah.
this kind of, this sadness that you carry and this grief is the price of love. That's the expression. It's true, you don't grieve things that you don't care about. You
Yeah.
grieve things that are meaningful to you, people, pets, you know. Uh, and I think, yeah, especially when you use a young child, you grieve the life that they would have had.
Mm.
I know that when her friends are turning 16 next year, she would have been 16 in January 2027. I'm going to find that hard because that's a milestone birthday. And I've got 16 and 18 and 21 and 30. And,
Mm.
for as long as I live, those milestones, when the first of her friends has a baby or gets married, or, you grieve the life that they didn't have as much as the life that they did. And whereas I tend not to do that when I think about my parents. A bit with my mum. I wish she'd have met her grandchildren and stuff, but and she didn't meet my kids. But it's different. It's a different kind of grief,
Mm.
in my experience.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's all we can do is talk from our own experience, isn't it? But I'm pretty sure that some people that listening will be able to resonate with what you are saying. And when you talk to people who've lost a child, it's a very different feeling than
Yes.
losing a parent. As you say, it seems to be the natural order of things,
Mm,
and that's been disrupted.
mm,
Don't expect it to happen.
no. And I think, I'm very fortunate in that, at the time Annalise died, her brother was 5, she was 7. And we've gone on, my kids are all adopted and we adopted again. So I've the oldest mother in town with a 5-year-old and a 13-year-old, both boys. And, I feel like there's a kind of before and after version of me. And, that's okay. That is, 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 that's okay that is just the way it is. And several times a month, probably, I will be trying to reference something, think of something, and I'll be like, is that before or is that after? You know, that date, the 25th of May, 2018, is the day my world changed, you know, and not for the better, but I'm still, you know, I think the other thing that's hard is, you know, our son was 5.
Mm.
One of the most painful things, and I didn't realize it at the time, you know, at the time that she died, I think, you know, you think that losing her is going to be the most painful part of it. But actually, I think I have found more painful, and again, I'm aware that that might be surprising, is seeing the impact on him and his changed world. You know, he went as a 5-year old, and I've now got a 5-year old, so it's really in my mind, gosh, how small he was. But his world changed overnight. You know, he went to school one day and she wasn't here when he came home, and that made him very, very uncertain of the world. And he still is very, very uncertain of the world. He he's terrified because he lost that innocence at 5. And that has been really, really painful for me, and I can't fix it. And he is still at 13, not hasn't begun to deal with his grief, I don't believe. You know, he can't really talk about her, doesn't. I know it's there. Occasionally I get glimpses of it, but that's really painful because he's still here and I can't change it for him. And that really, you know, is it's really distressing. But you can only do your best, and she is still very much a part of our family. But I think for him that loss is, yeah, he will be coming to terms with that for the rest of his life.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can oh, you're making me emotional, Claire. So I have to get tissues out now.
It's hard. It's
All the
hard.
listeners will be emotional. Of course, yeah. Yeah,
It's really
I can
hard because
appreciate it's
you know,
hard.
there's nothing I can do for Annaliese. She's not here, and
Yeah.
we we live with that every day. But I desperately want him to be okay. I want his, and it's different for the younger one because the younger one didn't ever meet her.
Yeah.
He still talks about her, and he's very much like her, and he will talk about her, and he will talk about how sad it is that but it's different. He's not traumatized in the way that you know our eldest is traumatized. And anybody, you know, I'm sure there are, you know, lots of your listeners that will have kids that have been through all sorts of experiences. It doesn't have to be the loss of a sibling. It could be all sorts of things.
Mm.
Having a child that I can't make it better, you know, and that's what you want to do, isn't it? That's what you
Yeah.
want to do for your kids. You want to take away their pain and their hurt and their worry, and you know, it it's really hard. I mean, he is hyper vigilant. He hears a car backfiring and he thinks it's somebody with a gun in the street. You know,
Mm.
this irrational fear of any time he hurts himself in any way, is how bad is it? Is it bad? Is it, you know, and it's, you can reassure him all you like, but he's got that hardwired into himself now. And all I can do is put the padding around him and try and support him the best that I can. But, you know, when she died, I had no idea that that's what was ahead of me. I mean, thank God I didn't, because at that point, you know, all you're trying to do is, you know, that didn't really come to light for a few years. But, you know, the ripples of a loss, any loss, that, you know, they're really, really, really far reaching. And sometimes it can really knock you off balance. But I know now that the the hard times come and the bad days come, and the moments where you just think, oh, how are we here? How are we going to survive this? I know that they go, and I know that I can survive them. And actually, I'm doing something quite different and brave this year. So for me, the day before she died is a day that I struggle with probably the most, because that's the day that I revisit and think, why didn't I ask this question? Why didn't I ask that question? Annaliese caught an infection and died of sepsis. So it was not picked up. And I mean, I had been to the GP and we were in the hospital, but it wasn't picked up by the hospital. And again, that's a part of our story, which is very hard to come to terms with, because there was neglect there. But this year, and so typically every year since then, I have gone to ground very much on the day before. Now this year, one of my favorite comedians was doing a show locally to where we live, and it was the only date that he was doing. And about 6 months ago, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe it's on that date. And I thought, I'm going to book it. I'm going to book it.
Mm.
And we are going. And I'm quite nervous about it, because I know it's a wobbly day for me. But it will be okay. And in fact, even more than that, I'm like some sort of weird psycho stalker, as my husband would say. I messaged the comedian, because you can now on Instagram, and I told him that I was coming to the show and the reason I was nervous about it and whatever. And I got this incredible message back. And I'm going to meet him after the show and say hi to him and have a hug. He's got a child about the same age as our youngest. And I don't know how I will be on the day. I'm sure I will be okay, but that is a marked difference. And for me, that shows progress. That shows I'm able to entertain the idea of a bit of progress. And yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Wow.
I know he's going to make me laugh, and that's going to feel good.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a big step, Claire. Well done.
It is a big step.
Yeah.
It really is a big step. And this, on the anniversary on Monday, it's half term. I've got both boys at home. Again, my natural wish would be to be on my own, so I can be however I need to be. I know my eldest finds it very difficult if I'm outwardly emotional, because he doesn't like it, because he sees me as vulnerable, and that unsettles him. So I will have to put a bit of a brave face on, because both boys are off school. It's a bank holiday in the UK that day this year, whereas other days they have actually been at school, and I've been able to just be however I need to be. But this year I'm gonna need to put my big girl pants on, and I will find time. In fact, a friend of mine has said she'll come and take the little one off and take him out for an ice cream, so that I'll have an hour to myself. And that's great. That's somebody that understands what I need. She's like, what do you need from me that day?
Yep.
That's great. That's amazing.
That is amazing. And you've written a book called Annaliese, which I had the privilege of reading. And I remember in that book you were talking about how some people avoid. I'm nobody's saying this is right or wrong. We're just saying that some people find it easier to talk. It's those people that say, what do you need? You need, and then show up with what you need, or give you what you need even when you haven't asked for it. But and I know in your book you give reference to what can people do.
I wrote the book kind of with two audiences in mind, I suppose.
Yeah.
One is, bereaved parents. And so each chapter, and the chapters I purposely wrote it so that it is an easy to read book. And also it's a book that you just read. So there's a chapter on school, there's a chapter on special occasions, there's a chapter about the funeral, there's a chapter about, family, whatever it might be. You can dip into the bits that feel relevant to you. But so the beginning of every chapter is kind of written what my personal experiences are, and then at the end of every chapter is a page or two. What can your support crew do to help?
Yeah.
And And because I feel that, and I've heard I've heard many bereaved parents say, people don't know what to do. We are, as a society, we are so ill-equipped to talk about death, let alone a young child's death.
Mm.
It just spooks everybody out and they just want to look the other way and they don't want to talk about it. And I get it because I might have been one of those people before. I'd like to think I wouldn't, but who knows? And so I purposely wanted to take my experiences of the things that people had done, small and big, that made a difference to me. And so that this book can work if you are supporting a bereaved parent, this book is as important for you as it is for them. And quite often, when I send my book out, I send out two copies. People order two copies because the you know if it's the bereaved parent, they want to give the book to their family, somebody close to them, so that they can actually you know just get some ideas. And I wanted it to be something that was practical and made people feel that, gave them an idea of what they might be able to do. And actually, it's often it's often very simple. It's what do you need? What do you need from me? Or it's leaving a candle on the doorstep, or it's sending a picture of something that was pertinent to that person, and just to let them know that you're thinking of them. It's funny, I was thinking ahead of talking to you, I've got two friends who had children in Annaliese's class and also children in our son's class. So, and they, I met them. I only knew them through Annaliese being at school. She was only in year two, so we'd known each other a couple of years and not particularly well. But these two individuals, Alex and Claire, just I mean, I don't know how I would have survived that first year to 18 months without them. We've got a WhatsApp group, and I thought about it today. I mean, we're 8 years on. We've got a WhatsApp group called the Monday Night Club, and that originated from after Annalise died. We would get together. I would just go to one of their houses every Monday night, just for an hour, just to have a space. In the early days, we were planning the funeral, we were doing whatever, and we haven't done that for many years because life is busy and think. But we are the Monday Night Club, and that's where that came from. And I was thinking about it today. We've never changed the name of that group.
Mm.
The origins of our deep friendship were born out of something that was really tragic and that nobody thought would happen. But I have come to value those friendships, and they're not the only two. There are others. I'm very fortunate, but they were there, whatever. They didn't shy away from me being a blubbering mess. They didn't try to solve anything. They were just there.
Yeah.
They were just there. And I'm very fortunate. And I would say to people in my position, if you're not as fortunate as to find that, but reach out to some of the groups. Another group, another kind of place that I've found a huge amount of support is a charity called the Compassionate Friends, which are a group of bereaved parents and grandparents and siblings. And nobody gets it like somebody who's been through it. That's the same of anything that we experience in life. But this charity, they're like family, and we get to know each other's children, even though we've never met each other mostly. I mean, they do have groups that meet, locally, and I don't do much face-to-face stuff, but online, nobody gets it like that family, and they are absolute warriors because we've all been coping with a really terrible loss. And what happens is it's a closed Facebook group, and we talk about our kids, and I know about their kids. And in fact, one of the people that I met through this charity, Abby went to the same school as me, but she was quite a bit younger. And her beautiful daughter, Sophie, died the same summer that Annaliese died. Sophie was only 3. And Abby and her family have now moved to Australia. Her husband's Australian. And we keep in touch. And last year, as I will this year, on Sophie's anniversary, I go to visit Sophie for Abby and sit there. And I read a story to her last year that was pertinent to her. And, I never met Sophie, but that is something that is a connection that we have, and we are able to support. That's an example of something that I would never have thought that you would do something like that. But it was, and in fact, last year was the first time I'd done it, because it was the first time that Abby had been in Australia, and I met Abby's dad at the in the graveyard, and I'd never met him, and we sat and we chatted, and it was, that's really special. That's really special. Sorry, you can see
Make me. I'm
I'm
just
pushing you to the
blubbering a wreck
brink.
now. Yeah, that's okay. It's not about me.
But those
But
things,
that's beautiful. It's beautiful
yeah,
what you were saying.
and that's on my calendar. You know, I feel honored to be able to do that
Mm,
for somebody in the way that other people have done stuff for me. And, it doesn't have to be a grand gesture. It can be something tiny,
mm,
but there are lots of ways that you can support somebody who's grieving. So yeah, that's why I felt so strongly about writing for it, because I think people just don't know what to do.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And now, where can people find your book?
You can find it on Amazon as well as on my website. The book's called And Always Annaliese, and it's written in my pen name, which is Claire Louise. My website is, www.andalwaysannaliese.com. But yeah, have a look. And if you feel that there's somebody that might need it, the truth is they probably do need it.
Mm,
And it's been, you find this a lot with bereaved parents. They do something in their child's name. It's really important to have some, not everybody, but for lots of people, it's important to have some sort of legacy. And for me, that is mine and Annaliese's legacy. I felt driven to find something positive out of just terrible, terrible darkness.
yeah,
And I feel I'm really proud. I'm really proud of it. And I think she would be amazed that there is a book about her. And I'm just looking to the side of me. I've just Art is another thing that I do a lot of, and I have just painted. So her middle name was Poppy, and I've just finished this piece of work, which is going to go up in my art studio, which is starting to be built. And you probably can't see it actually, but just very lightly on one of the petals, I've kind of written her name in red. So it's sort of in there, but subtle.
yeah,
And it's things like that that mean a lot to me, and connect me with her. I think connections with people that have died
yeah,
are very important, aren't they? Whatever they are, and they can be the most minute, seemingly insignificant things, but they will connect you to your special person, and they will bring you some sort of comfort and some sort of warm feeling. And we need to hang on to those things. It's really, really important.
yeah. Claire, thank you so much. Gosh, it's been an emotional roller coaster ride.
Yeah, I did
Just
that.
talking to
I have
you.
a reputation for doing that to people, but I think it's important. I think
It
it's
is really
important to
important.
have those hard conversations. It's important to be open with your emotions if you can. It's what makes us human.
Yeah,
It's what separates us, from the beasts. It's what makes us human, and I'm all for that.
yeah. Thank you so much for being here as a
Thank
guest
you
and
for
sharing
asking
your
me.
story. And I have no doubt people will find some. I'm trying to find the right word from your story. There'll be things that they can practically use if they're in
Yeah.
that situation. So
I
thank you
think
so much for that.
hope feels like a really big word, doesn't it? But I just want to offer a chink of light and just hold on. And if you're in that place right now that feels desperately dark and you just get through this morning or this afternoon and take a deep breath and put one foot in front of the other because at some point you'll be like I am 8 years on and finding yourself being brave enough to book and go and see a comedy show on the worst day of the year for you. And, like I say, there are times when you would never believe that's possible, but in time, these things become, a possibility.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Claire.
Pleasure.
Thank you. If you have in any way been affected by today's podcast episode, there are numbers at the end of the transcript which you can contact. We'd like to thank you all for listening. And if you'd like to join our Facebook group, there is also a link to that in the notes that go with this podcast. Have a great day.